I don't care what anyone says, buying a house on a mortgage is a scam. You've been lied to your whole life.
Oh my God, how many more complete Muppets are going to come on TikTok and try and convince people not to buy your own home? And this guy talking about buying it with a mortgage is going to cost you X amount clearly has no concept of the power of leverage and debt and how debt is eaten away by inflation over years. So let's try and take it in context for a second. Give me one other business, one other investment sector where you can borrow pretty much up to 99% of the value of the purchase. And every single penny that you earn in terms of capital appreciation, you earn completely tax-free. And you also get to live in the asset, meaning that you're not throwing away dead money on rent whilst the asset that you've just bought is going up in value. So you're kind of killing two birds with one stone. Name me one other that does that, and I'll swallow my tongue and admit I was wrong. The other thing as well is there's so many government incentives to get people on the property ladder, including Lifetime ISA, where they'll effectively give you up to £1,000 every single year towards your deposit whilst you're saving. Again, give me one other example where that happens in the UK to enable you to step into investment or even a business. It doesn't exist. And then let's come to property itself. So you buy the property by borrowing pretty much all of the money, but every single penny it goes up by, you get to keep 100%. And even if the market does drop slightly, over time it recovers, and it tends to recover better than where it got to in the peak prior. And if history has taught us anything, there is no other safer bet than parking your money into property, because it's very, very unlikely you'll ever lose money. And what property can give you is generational wealth. I'm not talking about get rich quick schemes and starting a business. Starting a fucking business is just another form of job. Whereas property investing, and you can do this by buying your very first property to live in, creates generational wealth, passive wealth, where you can retire and not ever have to exchange your time for money. And you literally can earn cash flow in the tens of thousands of pounds every single week. But the big thing that this guy jumps on is the fact that buying a property with a mortgage costs you like 2 or 3 times over the lifetime of the mortgage because of the interest. And that's a scam. But what he fails to understand is that over time, not only do you get the capital appreciation, but inflation will eat away the value of the debt. And I'll give you a really good example of this using my own grandparents. So my grandparents, blue collar workers, lived in a local authority, a council house, and my mum convinced them to buy that property before I was born under the Right to Buy scheme. And they paid £10,000 for their 3-bedroom mid-terraced. And £10,000 back then was probably 4 times my granddad's annual salary. So pretty much in line with the majority of salaries in, most of the UK now. And they never moved until they paid that mortgage off. So they paid that property off using the 25-year life cycle of that mortgage. So it probably cost them 3 times in interest payments to have that property. So they paid 10,000. Let's say it cost them 30,000 in total. Now, when they moved, they had no mortgage, and they sold that property for about 110,000. So the property value had gone up over 10 times in value. So forget any interest cost. The property had gone up over 10 times in value for a 25, 30-year period. They then were able to buy a bungalow, which they live in now, and live in that mortgage-free and retire. And if you compare their situation to their brothers and sisters, my great aunties and uncles, who never decided to buy their own home, they are nowhere near in the same position. They're either living with their sons and daughters, or they're living in some form of studio because their home got taken away from them when it was classed as being too big. So you buy yourself security, long-term security. You can buy yourself into a position of huge amounts of wealth. I mean, by me buying my first property with a high loan-to-value mortgage, 106% mortgage, I was able to, I suppose, wipe my slate clean of not doing well in school and not having a career or a professional career. I was a salesman. And now I'm retired. My cash flow is in the tens of thousands of pounds every single week. I live in my absolute dream home with no mortgage, all through buying my first home with a large or high loan to value mortgage. And to finish on this guy's point, and to prove he hasn't got a fucking clue what he's talking about, is inflation will eat away the value of the debt. So if you're in my grandparents' position where you're just going to buy that property and just going to pay the mortgage off over 25, 30 years, at the time, it was 4 times my granddad's salary. Now, when they came to sell it, it was pretty much probably just above the 30,000 it cost them in total in interest payments, the average UK salary for a year. So it was 1 times the UK salary. That's what inflation does to debt, is that even though the debt at the time that you take it out is 4 or 5 times your annual salary, and you might end up paying 2 or 3 times that over the life of the mortgage, inflation will reduce the size of that debt so much so that it becomes insignificant at the end of the life of the mortgage. So not only do you have a small value of debt on that property, but you also have a property that's increased in value, in this case, by 10 times. But even if it was 2 or 3 times, it pisses all over this argument. So when people are telling you about don't buy a property, don't use a mortgage, it's a scam, go and start a business, I'll tell you what is a scam, is starting a business and using a form of self-employment or a new business as just another form of job, exchanging your time for money. That's the fucking scam. Using assets to build yourself into a position of strength by leveraging good debt, which inflation eats over time in a tax-free environment, is by far the biggest accessible stepping stone for everyone in the UK to step into to get yourself into a position of generational wealth.